Hello, and welcome to this month's Side Alpha Leadership. I'm your host, David Polikoff. Very happy to have a fellow Capitol Fire instructor, Jason Rivera, on with me. Jason was on a podcast with us at FDIC when we did our talking tactics for fire engineering. It's kind of where you and I really kind of first met. We knew of each other, but the first time we actually, in the flesh, so to say. Without going further into this, welcome to the show and tell everybody a little bit about yourself, your background, where you came from, Jason.
Thanks, Dave. My name's Jason Rivera. I've been in the fire service for about 32 years now. My background is kind of diverse. I grew up actually in New Jersey, in a little town, Boonton Township, like no traffic lights, no delis, no gas stations, quiet rural town. I joined the fire department when I was in high school. I think we were doing about 80 runs a year, maybe. It's, like I said, a pretty small, quiet department. Volunteered there for a few years. I actually got hired as a DOD, Department of Defense civilian firefighter for 2 years at Picatinny Arsenal. I was hired as full-time, but it was a temp position. So basically, you work your 72-hour work week like everybody else, and then when your 2 years is up, they say, "There's the gate. Thanks for working here." So I did that. I left. I became a police dispatcher for a couple months, and then I had taken some tests. And I'm sure guys that are from the Northeast know getting hired in New Jersey is very difficult, especially being from a rural town and being a non-veteran. It's very, very difficult to get hired. So I had started taking tests in other places, and I scored particularly high in Stamford, Connecticut. And I was lucky enough, only about 3 months after I left the Arsenal, I got hired there as a career fireman. So I started there in 1998. I worked there for 16 years. I rose to the rank of captain. I was in special ops a good portion of my time there, riding Rescue 1, both as a firefighter, then as a lieutenant, and then as a captain after I did some engine time as a captain. I did, like I said, 16 years there. I was doing some acting deputy chief time when the chief was off as a shift commander. But if anyone's ever been to Stanford, it is a high-rise sprinkler city. The number of fires I was responding to, honestly, just every year, it was kind of less than the last. And towards the end, I said, you know what? I really would like to go to more fire duty. So I started looking around, started taking some tests, and I was lucky enough to get hired by the city of New Haven, which is where I currently am. So I've been there for 11 years. Besides my career work, I also volunteer in the town I live in Newtown, Connecticut. I was the fire chief a number of years back for about 4 years, and then I was assistant chief for, I believe, about 10. I kind of stepped my role back as my kids got older and I had to be home more and take them places and be involved with everything they're doing. So currently I'm a lieutenant, but I'm still very active and actually lucky enough that my oldest son, my 16-year-old, he now rides with me there. That's like a pretty cool new thing that's happened in the last couple of years for me. And if that's not enough, I also ride down to Christiana, Delaware. I go down there as much as I can, which I would love to go there more. For people watching the podcast, if you've never seen or heard of the place, if you're someone who likes going to fires and likes going to extrications and has some free time on their hand, I have nothing but extremely positive things to say about the place. About 100 working fires a year, 50 pins. The culture there is unmatched. Where else do you get to sit around a kitchen table with legends like Bob Pressler, Mike Lombardo? It's next level stuff that you really can't find in a lot of other places. In addition to all my fire service stuff, in terms of working and volunteering, I also am a member of the Massachusetts FEMA USAR team, which again is another big time constraint. It's quite a requirement. There's a lot involved with becoming a deployable member of that team. So as much as I can, I try and trek up to Massachusetts and get my time in. I was actually on leave of absence for a while because it was just too much going on in life. But I'm back to going there as much as I can. And then I own my own training company, Tactical Resource Fire Training. I was co-owner of another training company for about 6 years, decided to branch off and go on my own. And then I know Dave from also working for Capitol, and I also work for Fast Rescue Solutions for those of you guys who know about the Fast Board. So essentially, I'm always doing something fire service related, it seems. And between that, trying to squeeze in time with doing stuff with my kids and going to soccer games and everything else, it's pretty busy.
It's kind of cool, all the things you talked about, the circles that firefighters run into, you realize that, you say, oh yeah, you're in New Haven. Oh, Frank Ritchie, obviously everybody knows Frank Ritchie, but then you talk about, working for Fast Rescue. Oh, Joe Simpson. We all know Joe Simpson. So it's obviously working with Capital, just how the connections are with everybody. I want to go back to one of the things that you said in the beginning, where when you started off in your town, Connecticut, where you're running about 80 calls a year. So as a young guy, now I remember when I volunteered as a young guy, my dad was one of the chiefs at Burtonsville, which is in Montgomery County in Maryland. That's where I started off as a riding, counting and staffing. Prior to that, I was a junior member, because they didn't have junior members in Burtonsville. So I was in Greenbelt in PG County. And I did that from the age of 12 to once I'd hit 16, I joined my hometown, Burtonsville. But back then, Burtonsville probably runs like 6,000 plus calls a year now. But back then, we weren't even breaking 1,000 calls. And it was one of those, what you and I talked offline about, having volunteers in the station and getting them to and staying in the station. We wouldn't leave the firehouse because we were afraid we'd miss a call. And then, God knows how long you had to wait for the next call to come in. So did you have that type of feeling when you were at your department? It's like, if I go home and eat dinner, they might run one of the 80 calls that we run, and it might be another 3 months before I run another call.
Yeah, I mean, that was my late high school, early college-ish years, and yeah, it definitely had the feeling. I only went to college for 1 year, but it was about an hour away, and I'd go to class and be like, "Man, you average about 1 to 2 calls a week. If this one call happens while I'm an hour away, I'm gonna be pissed because I'm missing the one call for the week." And being that 18, 19, 20-year-old, wet behind the ears, green, you don't even wanna miss a fire alarm. Fast forward now 32 years later, I mean, I think I've been to enough fire alarms where if I miss it, I'm not gonna be too upset about it. But back in those days, yeah, it was like a big deal to miss a call, and God forbid you actually miss a structure fire, because I think back in those days we were going to about one fire every 3 years, probably, if
Oh.
that. So you miss that one, it's like, well, how do you get to prove yourself? How do you get the guys who have been there a long time to look at you as a young new guy and respect what you're able to do, because it's so few and far between they actually get to see you work.
It's funny. We've had, we have college live-in program and whatnot. Like RJ famously tells this story. He came down from Cromwell up in Connecticut and came down to Maryland, to Montgomery County, to go to what we call Harvard on the Pike, which is Montgomery Community College. And his intent was to get his degree, but he got into Rockville, and those guys are always running calls, and next thing you know, it's like, well, let's see if I can't get hired as a career guy type of thing. But
Fire service is addictive.
it is, man. And it's like your whole intention was, I'm going to go to college, I'm going to get a degree. But wait a minute, they're running fire calls over here, and we get to sit around. And if I go to class, I'm missing, and I can't be part of that conversation at the kitchen table about the call that they ran because I was sitting in English class or whatever. So it can corrupt these young guys that are trying to get that college degree, and just doesn't end up happening. And it was funny that was my intent when I graduated high school. It was volunteer. I never lived at the firehouse, but I never left the firehouse. But I wasn't considered a live-in because I didn't have my own bunk. But it was graduated. I'm going to go to college, get my AA degree in fire engineering, and then my goal was to become a career guy, and started applying as soon as I got out. And I did like a semester of classes. Then I got hired in Montgomery County, and it took me 15 years to get my AA degree, but I got it. But it was one of those. It's like, well, I'm going to go back, and it's like running more in the overtime, and then you're running at your volunteer house. And so it's funny. And it, kind of like what we were talking about online is, back in the day, we didn't want to leave the firehouse because we were afraid we were going to miss that call. And now, and I've talked about it on the podcast before, is trying that recruitment and retention on the volunteer side. It's hard. And I know they're having difficulties on the career side, getting people, but it is just brutal to get new members to fill out the application, do the background check, and then come to the firehouse. And I think what I find that, we get them in the door, but making them, trying to get them to stay is a whole nother issue, because once they find out the amount of work that you have to do just to be minimum staffing, just the bare bones classes that you need, it could be 18 months to 2 years. And a lot of people don't recognize, they think they're going to come in, we're going to teach them how to pull a line, teach them how to ride the fire engine, teach them how to put their gear on, throw some gear at them, and then the bells go off and they're going down the road. But there's so much more to it. Obviously, I'm not telling anybody that watches this show what we don't know, but the general public, they have no idea. And now we're getting into this bind of trying to get volunteers to come in while we have the older guys like you and I can say that we're the older guys,
Come on, man. I'm not there yet.
but to stay, because we have a wife and kids, we have a full-time job and everything, trying to get these young guys and gals to step up. But so are you noticing that? I know you're still involved in your volunteer department. How is it where you are? Because it seems to be the same everybody I talk to throughout the country.
We are definitely hurting. I think most of similar type communities have similar type problems. We're hurting in both recruitment and retention. People are not knocking on the door to get in very often. We'll take in an occasional member. Ironically, though, I was down in Greenwich, Connecticut last night teaching an extrication class, and I was talking to the chief. He just took in 9 new members in the last month. I said, well, that's fantastic for you guys. Like, that's kind of unheard of nowadays to take 9 new people in a month. I can tell you, the community I live in, we're a unique situation where the town itself is very large square mileage. It's about 60 square miles, so a pretty big area of land. But it's divided into 5 separate fire departments, each with their own chief, each with their own command structure. And other than automatic aid, we don't really intermingle too much with each other, which manpower wise or staffing wise, that kind of hurts us, because one department may be doing really well with people while another one is struggling, but the one who's doing well doesn't really help out the other one, because we're all separate and individual and we run our own calls, except for larger incidents, structure fires, extrications, etc. Getting people to come in the door, and then once we do get them in, though, yeah, getting them to stay, because I think, like you said, most people join and they think they're going to be doing really cool stuff, real quickly. Like, oh, a couple week orientation, I'll be riding fire trucks and putting fires out, and that's just not the case. There's so many minimum standards now. I think firefighter 1 is probably near 200 hours now,
It's
150,
pushing it.
somewhere in that ballpark.
Yep, it's pushing
So
it.
if you're married with kids, say someone joins, a little bit later in life, full-time job, maybe 2 jobs, where do you find time to go sit in fire 1 Tuesday night, Thursday night, and every other weekend for a full day? You're missing your kids' soccer games. You're missing all the important stuff in life for a good 6-month chunk of time. That's not something, and all for what? 0 pay. So we have a few incentives where I live. Certainly not something worth, skipping your whole family life, but we have a tax incentive, really small things like a permit to the town dump for free, a pass to the pool, little things like that we get, but certainly nothing to, lose your family over. So it's tough to keep people interested when we do get that person that comes in, goes through the minimal training, and we're like, all right, this guy or girl is going to stick with it. They're here long term. Keeping them interested is also difficult, because the town I live in, we're not burning down. We are not going to fires every day. We run like 600-700 calls, I'd say, a year, a handful, maybe on a busy year, 2 handfuls of structure fires. So how do you keep people interested? We found that probably the best way is making realistic quality training. That's the only way to keep them interested. If you just keep doing the same boring things over and over and over, they're going to lose interest. And they say, why am I hanging out in the firehouse every Monday night when I could be eating dinner with my family and, relaxing and watching TV or whatever the case may be? So keeping that training interesting and relevant is definitely one of the things that keeps people coming back for more.
Yeah, and I want to talk a little bit about the incentives, because you go around and you want to hear what are other people doing to try to keep them in there. Some of the things that we've done at Sykesville. Once we get them in, we instituted what's called an observer program. So we have our checkout to ride the engine to count as staffing. It's 5 parts, and the 5th part is obtaining firefighter 1 CPR and all that. But the first 4 steps are things like apparatus inventory, things like that. So what we've done is we've taken and we've broken that out where we give them the first 4 parts. And once they get those 4 parts, and it takes about 2 weeks to get those first 4 parts done, and then we'll give them an orange helmet, which is an observer helmet, and then like a traffic vest, and they can ride the fire apparatus for fire calls. They just have to stay with the driver. They can't, wander around the fire ground or anything like that. And then usually, like once the emergency's over, we'll grab them, we'll bring them over, and we'll show them some stuff, show them the tools and things like that. Trying to keep them interested. We're trying to plant that seed that, hey man, it was really cool going emergency to there, but I'd really like to help, to do stuff. So that's the incentive. Go get that Fire One class. Go get EMT or EMR, CPR, hazmat, and or your hazmat class, and then you'll count as staffing, and then you can start riding as putting your SCBA on and being a functioning firefighter. That's one of the incentives that we have. Once we get people in, the training, that's like a huge component. We were finding that we were trying to do like one big training a month for like 4 hours, and we'll try to bring everybody in on a Saturday or Sunday, and we'll get them breakfast or maybe lunch. But we found that it was difficult to get these guys to commit 5 or 6 hours on a Saturday or Sunday when you work 5 days a week, and those kids' soccer games or baseball, family outings and things like that. So we're looking at we're hitting more of training during meeting nights, where we'll get a large number of people to come in. Maybe we'll do like a 30-minute training. Most of the time it's in the classroom. We'll hit some classroom stuff, just some quick drills, and then we have our meeting, and then afterwards, if people want to stick around, we can do whatever. So we're catching them that way. And then we have duty crews. Our duty crews run from about 7 to 10, 7 to 11 in the evening, and we'll do some type of a drill. Maybe we'll get on if we don't have enough people, go out on the apparatus and just kind of drive around the area, do some area familiarization, things like that. But we found it just doing smaller chunks of things instead of trying to jam everything in at one time. We still do home response. So, the pagers go off in the middle of the night, got to come up to the firehouse to get the apparatus on the street. We're struggling with that as well. It's hit or miss. My philosophy is I'm a chief. They gave me a car, so my obligation is either to get to the scene and run command, or get to the firehouse to get the apparatus on the street. So we're trying to get the volunteers to get to the firehouse to get that piece of apparatus out. And we have career guys. They can usually get the first piece out the door, but we still got a second engine, a tower, a rescue squad, a brush truck, utility. So we've got a lot of apparatus we can take, but getting the volunteers in the door, just haven't kind of cracked that code yet of what can we do to get people in the door. We have picnics, and obviously we have a banquet every year. We try to do a member appreciation picnic and things like that. Right now our carnival's going on, so we're actually getting a lot of people show up for the carnival to work the booths, and we're staffing the apparatus. But like you said, it's tough, and I look back, it's hard to not try to look back what we were, where we would always have people in the firehouse, and we didn't want to leave. And now you've got these young kids, and you can't get them to come to the firehouse to stay for a little bit. And some of that's on us. We get these new people in, and they come to the firehouse and they don't know anybody, and like deer in the headlights. Nobody takes the time to kind of turn around and say, "Hey man, what's your name? What are you doing?" Hey, they just kind of ignore them. And it's like I can go home and get ignored by my wife for free. And so sometimes we're our own worst enemy. Any incentives that you've heard of, or things that are maybe working in some other jurisdictions? I mean, obviously, if you run a ton of fires like in Christiana or like we did in Kentland, we were always getting people to come and ride. We never had a shortage of people to ride because they wanted to cut their teeth on getting some experience. But you and I live in a town. We didn't pick our town because we run a lot of fires and we live in ghettos and shit. That's not where we want to live. We want to work there, but we don't live there. So we don't have that incentive of burning stuff down all the time.
Yeah, Christiana is an animal all of its own, similar to Kentland, where you'll have people driving 3, 4, 5 hours for zero pay. You're literally getting paid in fires and extrications. The fact that I'm going to drive 4 hours each way, but the likelihood of me going to something really cool in the next 24 hours is very high. Maybe even 2 or 3 really cool things I'll get to do in 24 hours. That makes the drive all worth it. But the towns that we live in don't provide that. So it's funny you mentioned about the shorter training sessions. So I've been involved in training. I've been in my volunteer department for almost 20 years now, and it ebbs and flows. We have a bunch of people that are really into it, and then some leave or change interests or move away or whatever the case is, and then it goes down. We've tried a whole
Mhm.
bunch of different training ideas. Like, let's try and do once a month a big drill on a Sunday. And the first couple times, you'll get a bunch of guys that come out and they're all into it. And then people get kind of tired of that. So, okay, let's go back to doing, Monday nights. And it just, what we have started doing lately that is working currently for us is just what you said, doing small, short duration drills. So if it's not even drill night, if it's work detail night, which is, running saws, checking SCBAs, fueling up the apparatus, if that's what we're doing that night at the firehouse, tell everyone, hey, show up 30 minutes early, or we'll start the work detail 30 minutes late. And let's just do a really quick drill. Stretch a line, all geared up with SCBA, mask up. That's the end of the drill. Let's just get those reps in of stretching a line, masking up with gloves on. Let's even time it and, make it fun, make it a competition. These guys versus these guys. Who does it faster? Most firemen are, pretty competitive. Just little short things like that. I've gotten very good feedback about that. Yeah, an 8-hour day is a long day. I travel all over Connecticut doing training, and there are some departments that have no problem. They will spend 8 hours on a Sunday. They'll get 20 guys to come out. They won't complain once. We'll go from 8 to 4. No one's looking to cut out early and they're all into it. But not every place is like that. So that short duration training seems to be pretty attractive. People seem to be pretty into that. Other than that, we don't offer, unfortunately, a lot of incentives. Like I kind of mentioned the tax, but none of us are volunteering, to get $1,000 off your property tax. That's not like, oh, I need to go join the volunteer fire department so I can take $1,000 off my property tax. It's a nice benefit. I wouldn't turn it down, but no one's running out to go do that. Other than that, some people come for the camaraderie. A lot of us, at least in my department, are career firemen other places, which is nice when you go to a fire, because most of us work in, fairly busy cities, which is cool. Other than that, we don't really offer a lot, which is not good on our end. In terms of the young people and keeping them interested, my kid's one of them. He'll come to the firehouse. If there's nobody he knows right away, what does he revert to? Picks up this and starts, doing things on his phone. And if you
Mhm.
look around, everyone else is on their phone. No one's that interpersonal communication, like when me and you first joined our volunteer fire departments many years ago. Usually a senior guy, an older guy, introduce himself. Every time you'd go back, you'd strike up a conversation. You build those interpersonal relationships with people that they're just not getting nowadays. And also, like you said, it's on us. It's not the kids' fault. They don't know. We need to kind of break those barriers down and with open arms invite these people in. We instituted actually a new member training program about 2 years ago. I stepped away from my volunteer department for a little while. I wasn't pleased with a few things on the admin level, and it was just I needed to step away for just to get away from it for a minute. Then when I got back involved again, I was looking. We'd have new people join, and they would just kind of get thrown to the wolves. Like it would be your first or training nights or Monday nights. So it's their first Monday night in the firehouse, and they're doing some sort of like advanced extrication type training. This is the person's first time even being in a firehouse. What benefit is it to them to sit through or watch or even participate in something that they have no idea about? So what we started doing is taking our new people, breaking them off from the main group and running a way more basic type evolution for them. Simple things, putting your gear on, putting your SCBA on, putting up ladders, things like that. So they're not overwhelmed. You're not brand new and you're like, oh my God, how am I ever going to learn all this stuff? We try and break it down to the basics while they're still new.
Yeah, and that's what we found is kids they're on their phone, and even the adults that are on their phone, and it's like I said earlier, they come in and they're already nervous. They're young kids, they're nervous. A bunch of older people, they're in an environment that if they didn't grow up in that, they don't know anything about the fire department. Maybe their dream was to be a firefighter, or maybe they want to be career and they're trying the volunteer thing out, and they walk in and nobody we should be like running for mayor every time one of our new guys come in, shaking their hand. Hey, how you doing? Tell us a little about yourself. Come sit down. This is what we're talking about. Why'd you join? strike up that conversation. So when they come back and they see you, like you said, there's that connection. Um, like I said, we are our own worst enemy, where we just assume not even talk to a new person and, kind of alienate that guy. And he's like, I'm not going to come back around anymore. It was intimidating and nobody wanted to talk to me. They just don't care that I'm here. So, we've got to get away from that. We've got to take the time, because even though we don't do that, they'll turn around and say like, oh, we don't have any new members coming in. How do we get new members? Well, if you stop ignoring the ones that are actually applying, maybe you can push them through. One of the things that you had talked about with the Fire One class, it's like 160 hours or something like that. EMT, at least in the state of Maryland, it's like 200 plus hours. So just to get your Fire One, your EMT, and your hazmat, which I think is 80 hours, 60 or 80 hours, when it's all said and done, you're looking at 2 years just to get the core classes to count as staffing. And I've screamed it from the mountaintops that we need to approach training differently as an organization. Like in the state of Maryland, we have the Maryland Fire Rescue Institute. It's like we're still teaching like it was back in the 80s. Get in your car, drive to a training academy, sit in a chair, do fumbles through PowerPoints for 3 hours while you're sitting there looking at the screen, and then you go home. Like I've written about it. I've talked about it. I'm going to talk about it again. And COVID, if anything, what we learned about COVID is that we can do stuff virtually and we can still be engaged. I know they ran some classes in our state online. They didn't like the results, and it's like, okay, well then freaking fix it. But just don't, throw it in the shitter just because it didn't work how you wanted it to work. To me, this is a light that would have people start taking classes. So, and I even said, take Fire One. We said 150 hours for Fire One. Maybe the first couple of weeks we go into the classroom, get the paperwork done, get to know each other. This is what the class is going to look like. And then we're going to start doing hybrid learning. So on Wednesday nights, instead of you driving 25, 30 minutes to the training academy, you're going to sit in your den, turn your computer on, and go through Canvas or Zoom or whatever program that you use. And that instructor can share a screen, and you can have a 3-hour class or how long it's going to be, and do your classroom stuff that way. And then when it comes time to do the practical stuff, well, obviously we're going to be in person. So instead of doing it just on a Saturday, do it Saturday and Sunday. So Saturday and Sunday for the next 2 months or 3 months, you're going to be committed to the training academy. Not only will you get the 150 hours, that class will be over sooner because you've doubled up on your practical days. You can do that with the management classes, with your fire officer ones and fire officer twos, instructor one, and all that. And where you have to meet in person, well, then you go to the academy and meet in person. But I'm telling you, I would much rather, and I got my AA degree through my college online. I would much rather sit in my den and knock out a class when I'm home with my kids, my family. 3 hours, I'm done. I can walk back downstairs. I don't have to do 3 hours and 30 minutes to the training academy, 3 hours in the training academy, and then 30 minutes home, and then go to bed. you know, there is a better way. We just need to embrace it. If we're running into these roadblocks with these people that are running these academies, then get new people at those academies because they are not thinking in the times. My kids had to do their whole school year online. They got A's and B's. My wife and I both work shift work. So we were one of us or both of us were always home. So they were always doing their schoolwork. But as an adult learner, you either want it or you don't. And if you want it, you're going to sit in through the class and you're going to do it. I think that's a huge incentive. And you might find that you'll retain people. They may even take more classes, not just get the bare minimum, but actually get higher education in the fire service through, our fire classes, start taking classes that may not be required, but maybe you want. So if you want to move forward in the ranks, maybe be a chief one day. But what about, do you have a bunk room at your department where people can spend the night?
So no, we actually do not. There are departments in the area that have a live-in-ish program for college students. Essentially, you give them X amount of hours of ride time, and in exchange, you get to live there for free. We had a brief discussion about that. There's not too many colleges nearby. Most of the generally the town I live in, most people when they go to college, they go away to college. There is a few commuter colleges here, but currently we don't have that demographic, that age group enough that anyone's really looking to do that. It would be nice to have it. I mean, who would ever complain about having staff people in the firehouse ready to roll out when, when the tones drop. That would be fantastic. One of the things that we do well, to kind of circle back to what you were saying about the Fire One, is especially, is a lot of volunteer departments in the area will host their own Fire One programs. So two bordering towns to my town, they each host a Fire One program and a Fire Two program annually. So it's cutting down on people's commuting time. They use local instructors, which I guess can be good or bad depending how you look at it. It can be good in that they bring you local knowledge on how we operate. So you're actually kind of learning what goes on locally. On the flip side, you may have instructors that don't have a ton of experience if they come from departments that really don't go to many fires. So, yeah, there's pluses and minuses to both. And a lot of these departments will also host other certification classes. They'll bring in, say, the State Fire Academy to come in and present a Fire Officer One or a Fire Instructor One. So you're not driving an hour, from my town to the State Fire Academy is, on a good day, an hour and a half.
Mm.
Nobody wants to do that, over and over and over again. So they'll bring those programs locally, which is obviously much more appealing to people.
We're fortunate, in Maryland, we have the Maryland Fire Rescue Institute. The headquarters is in College Park in Prince George's County, but then they have satellite academies all throughout the state. On top of a lot of jurisdictions, a lot of these counties have their own training academies in their county. So we're never at a loss to have a training academy to go to. Plus, a lot of these departments, especially where I work in Frederick, they have a lot of halls and things like that attached to their building, so they can have classes in their firehouses. So it does cut down on that commute a little bit. But yeah, that's a huge benefit if you can swing that to be able to actually get a class in a local jurisdiction where you can cut down on that travel time. But yeah, I think that there's things out there. We talked a little bit about the bunk room. Like all the fire departments in Montgomery County have bunk rooms. I think all the ones in Frederick now have well, all but a couple have bunk rooms. Um, and I can tell you right now, we're fortunate in Maryland. We have a lot of colleges in Maryland, and I'll tell anybody that's listening to this right now, if you're thinking about, if you're a volunteer somewhere and you want to go to school in Maryland, you can come live at Sykesville if you've got the if you've got the time, because we've got University of Maryland College Park in Baltimore. We've got community colleges, we've got Hopkins, we've got Towson, so we've got a lot of colleges. So if anybody wants to come live at Sykesville, more the merrier. But I think that that's a huge incentive that, hey, your rent is to run calls when you're here. You have to be here a certain amount of hours per week. We're going to give you a free room, and all the bunks in Sykesville are four walls. They're like a dorm. You've got walls, doors, your own room that you just have to run calls, and then you go to college, you go to your class or whatever. When you're done, you come back to the firehouse. Most of these departments that have bunk rooms usually have big commercial sized kitchens, so there's refrigerators to be able to eat, and free coffee, hot chocolate, tea, whatever it is. But so there are those little perks and incentives for the younger people that are graduating high school that are thinking about, even the parents that are listening is like, hey, if he's a volunteer, and instead of paying them to have to live on campus, which is another $15,000, which I know, go live at the firehouse. It's free.
Oh,
You're going to reduce on your
Christiana thrives on that for years.
University of Delaware.
Exactly. For years, they didn't have an official live-in program. They had guys who were there almost 24/7, but it wasn't an official live-in program. I would say, I'm going to guess, about 2 years ago, they adopted an official live-in program with requirements and stipulations, etc. And it's been very successful. It's generally young go-getters that are looking to get on the job. If there's a downside to it, I would say that the live-ins don't usually last there too long because they end up getting hired somewhere. So we just lost, or they just lost, several live-ins because they got hired, DC, Wilmington, wherever. But if you're in college, I believe the stipulations are you either have to be going to school or you have to be working full time. They're not looking for, like deadbeats to just hang out at the
Right.
firehouse 24/7.
Right.
As long as you meet those stipulations, you're good. And you have to give them X amount of hours per week. And like you said, you're just living there for free. And there's, a commercial kitchen and people always hang out with and talk. Or if, you're not feeling it that day, you go to your room and, chill out, whatever. It's there for you. And if you want to run a ton of calls, and a lot of the surrounding departments hire part-time firemen or full-time firemen. So again, you could get your start working part-time or full-time for a smaller department where you're cross-staffing an engine and an ambulance. And if your goal ultimately is to work in, a DC or a Baltimore or a Philly, it's all commutable from there. And they have a very high success rate of those guys end up moving on to one of those larger jobs.
Yeah, it's funny. One of my good friends, haven't talked to him in a while, but we were good friends. We volunteered together in Beltsville. He was going to University of Maryland. I ended up getting hired in Loudoun County, but he was from Pennsville, which is exit one in Jersey.
That is, I believe, where the chief of Christiana is from. Kevin Copperthwaite, I believe, is from Pennsville.
Right. So they didn't have they built their own bunk room. They were like one of the few departments in that area that actually had a bunk room, and literally on the other side of the bridge. But, a lot of that's a foreign concept to a lot of departments. Like, "What do you mean a bunker? You mean people living at the firehouse? Why would you want that?" I'm like, "Why wouldn't you want that?" Dude, roll out of bed, start the engine up, and all you gotta do is everybody pile on and we go. A lot of the, departments in the, Baltimore, Washington area thrive on that live-in program. I remember at Kentland, there was people would be sleeping on the couches because they were hoping that one day a bunk would open up that they could move in. They were living on couches and whatnot, but,
Yep.
and I'm sure it's the same way at Christianity. You got people that are lined up to run because they run calls. Obviously the fires is an incentive, especially if you're already a firefighter and you've got your training and things like that. But yeah, I mean, I don't think that we'll solve the problem, but I think, just talking about it, might be spark something that somebody's like, hey, I never thought about that. Maybe we could do this. Maybe we could do that. I always say firefighters run on food, buy them lunch. If you're going to do a drill, in the morning, some donuts, coffee, and then lunchtime pizzas, subs, whatever, just, feed the guys. Even if it's like a work detail, hey, we're going to do some spring cleaning, feed the guys, keep them around the firehouse. One of the things that we do, I don't know if you've run into this, but we'll run a call in the middle of the night in our volley house, and, calls a bullshit call. We're out 10 minutes. We come back to the firehouse for the next 3 hours. We're sitting in the engine room at 2 o'clock in the morning, bullshitting. Next thing you know, it's like, man, it's 4 o'clock. I got to get up in a half hour to go to work. But, that's the camaraderie. That's what should be drawing these people in to the friends that you make in the fire department are the friends that'll help you bury the bodies, and the people that'll pick up the other end of the couch to help you move in or out of your house or whatever. Those are the friends you make for life.
Yeah, it's
So,
lifelong. It's lifelong friendships. And when you talk about staffing the firehouse, at the end of the day, what is the purpose of the fire department? It is to serve the public. How better to serve the public than getting on the road 30 seconds after dispatch, 45 seconds after dispatch, not arriving on scene 10 minutes into the incident. The person who's trapped in their car, they're not going to be happy when we're showing up 15 minutes after dispatch. They want to see you rolling up shortly after they call 911. What better way to do that than having people in the firehouse 24/7 when possible? It's the difficulty is I get it. If you're only running 600 calls a year, that's 1 to 2 calls a day to justify or to explain to someone or get the buy-in to, oh yeah, I'm going to sit at the firehouse all day long to go on one call. It's a tough sell versus busier places. Yeah, if I'm running 10 calls today, you could certainly get people to want to come in and ride because of that level of activity. Unfortunately, you can't match that everywhere.
right, you can, and that is tough. I mean, me now, I'll go to the firehouse and hang out for maybe like an hour or two, but I'm not an all day hang arounder guy anymore. I mean, I used to, I would hang around the firehouse hoping that we'd run a call or two, but, now we get the pagers up the road. But, yeah, so like I said, there's got to be a lot of things that you and I haven't touched on. So I'm going to put that out to the people that are listening or watching this show. If you got ideas or things that work for you, please drop me an email, or if on YouTube, put it in the comment section. It's things that are working for you guys. And obviously, if you have any questions about the things that we've talked about, or questions specifically to Jason, I'll get him to and we'll get you answers. But curious to hear what you guys are doing to attract and retain your volunteers, because it is difficult, and we're having problems on the career side as well. So let's transition a little bit into the career side, because we're actually, we got about 20 minutes left, believe it or not. So you were at Stanford, and the the high rises and all that. We did a lot of high rise stuff when I was working in Silver Spring. A lot of them weren't sprinklered. It is a bigger city department, so I know you had to have picked up some stuff when you were there as a young firefighter, and you moved through the ranks, and then things that you kind of held. Give me some stories of some wins and some failures, and lessons learned and things like that, just to try to humanize it a little bit and
I got you.
pass on what you learned to the people that are listening.
As a I got hired young. I was 21 years old when I got hired. I got promoted relatively young. I think I only had about 5.5, 6 years on the job when I made lieutenant. So I was 26, 27. And then I made captain only, I think, about a year and a half, 2 years after that. In retrospect, I was a go-getter. I was eager. I was surrounded by guys, like my circle of friends there were the same exact way, young, aggressive, wanting to move up the ranks. Now, at my age, at 48, looking back at that, I actually wish I had kind of slowed my roll a little bit and enjoyed riding that back step and enjoyed not having the so much burden of responsibility at such a young age, because I made a ton of mistakes as a young officer, managing, getting involved in every little thing that I absolutely did not need to get involved in, uh, being an asshole when I didn't have to be one. There's a time to be very stern and strict, and there's a time where you can just let it go. And I definitely made my mistakes through those years. So, and I even see it now. I see, because I'm on the other end of things, where I'm on the older side of it, and I see these young 20-something-year-old guys come in. They're talking about making lieutenant with, like, they only have a year on the job, and they're already talking about, oh, what books? When do I start studying? When's the next lieutenant's test coming up? Get good at being a fireman before you worry about making that leap. Uh, there, everyone likes the power and the money and all that stuff, but there is a ton of responsibility that is now on your shoulders. Are you ready to lead guys at 25, 26 years old into situations that, not to sound cliche, but, could be a matter of life and death? Are you ready to lead those guys? And even on a less serious note, even just the everyday, the BS that goes on in the firehouse. I look at things a whole lot differently as a 40-something-year-old man than I did as a 20-something-year-old man. I definitely should have laid back, a little more here and there. And there was definitely a learning curve, coming up and getting promoted very young, for sure.
Yeah, I got hired when I was 18. I was really
Ooh.
fortunate, and I spent like 7 years as a firefighter, just riding in the back, driving the engine, when the master was off. And then from there, I did 7 years, and then I promoted to what we call master firefighters, like a technician. And I did, I want to say I probably did 3 or 4 years of that, of driving the truck and the rescue squad, engine companies, things like that. And there's a lot of value to spend time in each rank, learn each rank as you move forward. I tell people, like in Montgomery County, you could go from firefighter to lieutenant. You can sit for the lieutenant's test if you got the time on. So you're riding, in the back of the fire engine to riding up front. Never ridden up front before. You may have seen your lieutenant do it, but now you're doing it, and you're at a whole nother firehouse with different people.
Do you
So you
guys do
never really,
acting at all or no?
you can. I don't know if they did acting. Like, if you were a fire 3 and you were, which is the highest rank of firefighter you could go to, and you were on the lieutenant's list, you could bump into the front seat, but you have to have an officer riding behind you. And I did that a lot when I was a captain. When I had my firefighters or my masters that were on the lieutenant's list, once they made the list, they went through their officer candidate school. I'd say, all right, you're riding up front today. I'm going to ride in the back. I mean, my only stipulation is don't say anything stupid on the radio. Make sure you do your reports. And I ride behind them, and just, just in case they need help or whatever, but I'll let them run the calls and talk to the driver and talk on the radio and all that. So when it came time for them to get promoted and they leave my firehouse to go to another firehouse, they have a little bit of that experience underneath their belt. But as far as bumping up captains that are on the battalion list, they could be bumped up into the battalion, and ride as the battalion chief for that shift. but there is value of spending time, learn each position. It's so critically important, especially when you become a lieutenant or a captain, and now you're evaluating. You have to do your yearly evaluations on those firefighters and those technicians. If you never spent time as a technician, really didn't cut your teeth driving an engine or a truck, how can you successfully evaluate somebody that they're doing a good job? You have to know those jobs, and like you said, in retrospect, spend that time, learn those positions and those as you before you move forward. It'll be there, when it's time, but just don't try to rush through it because you miss a lot. So, but anyway, so go on. So what else? You started moving through the ranks pretty quick.
Yeah, I started moving through the ranks, and then I was in my early to mid 30s, and I was already in the car as a shift commander on a somewhat frequent basis. It was an older department when I was there. A lot of the guys had a lot of time on the job. They were on the tail ends of their career. I remember as a 21-year-old kid starting my first day in the firehouse, I was riding with a 73-year-old firefighter, who was on the back step also. That was before they had mandatory retirement ages, but as a 21-year-old kid, I'm like, wow, this is different. It was not what I expected, and it was an older job. So when I progressed through, I understand if I had 30 years on the job and this 20 something year old kid's telling me what to do, I almost felt the need to like prove myself to them, which maybe I didn't need to do, or I could have gone about it a better way. Just because that age gap it's an intimidating factor. I feel like I'm talking to my father, telling him what to do because they're relatively close to that age. As I progressed up and I started riding the car, I was still again in my fees. Now I'm standing at a command post when really, what do I want to do? I want to be crawling down the hallway. I want to be on the nozzle. I want to be cutting the roof. And here I am standing outside. I'm like, again, I just had that overwhelming feeling that I kind of just progressed up the chain faster than what I really truly wanted to do. So leaving that job it was a combination of factors, like I had mentioned in the beginning of our discussion. Yeah, the lack of fire duty was a little bit tough, but also just feeling that I had progressed up too fast and I'd missed doing all that hands-on stuff. Even when I was the boss of the rescue, we go to an extrication. I'm watching the guys cut apart the car. I'm like, man, I kind of miss cutting apart a car myself. So I decided, you know what? I have enough time to receive a pension. Connecticut's a little different than a lot of places in that generally each town or city has its own pension program. So I was vested in my pension. I retired with 16 years on the job. The way their contract worked at the time was if you left between years 15 and 20, when you hit year 20, you start collecting your pension. So I do essentially wait 4 years, and they've been paying me my pension ever since. I started over in New Haven. I went through a 14-week academy all over again to learn the New Haven way of doing things, which is uniquely different. We do a lot of things the New Haven way, for better or for worse. Most of the time, it's for the better. And I started all over again. As I was going through the academy, I let it be known maybe to people with maybe a little pull here and there that I wanted. Everyone knows who everyone is. They're like, oh, we know you were a captain in Stanford. It's only 45 minutes down the street. We know we know about that. I said, I don't want any sort of, I just want to go to a busy engine. I want to go to a busy engine and get my ass kicked day in and day out. And I was lucky enough to do that. I ended up at Engine 6, which currently they run about 6,000 runs a year. So it wasn't quite that busy 11 years ago, but it was busy. I spent a couple of years there. I absolutely loved it. I ended up getting pulled out to go to special ops because of some of the training I had. But yeah, at this time, currently, I don't have intentions of moving up the chain yet. My feelings on that are starting to maybe change. I'm 48. I'm on the downhill side of things. I don't, how much longer my body will hold out and everything else. So it's on the radar, but I'm still not ready to pull the trigger on it yet. I'm pretty happy. I feel like I'm almost making up for what I should have been doing 20 years ago, enjoying that backstep life.
It's funny leaving. It had to be a hard decision to 16 years on the job, and it's like, man, if I did 4 more, I'd have 20 years on the job. But you're like, I'm not getting out of this career what I think I should be getting out of this career. And I know guys that work for departments like in Howard County or whatever, and they're like, you know what, I want to go to more fires. I'm gonna leave and go to Baltimore City. And I'm like, bro, you're on the lieutenant's list. You're gonna get promoted And it's like, yeah, I just want to run some fires. So they left, and they just go to Baltimore City. It's like, to me, I never thought about that. I think fleetingly when I was in Montgomery County, I thought about taking the test for DC, and I'm like, nah, I'll just stay where I am. And I'm glad I did. It was the right decision, and did 35 years, and it was a great career. I failed miserably at retirement, so I did it for 5 days, and then got picked up in Frederick. But um, I was fortunate that I was only really at one truly slow station in my entire career. So I got to stay busy. And it's never enough fire, like you said. You could go to, 3 or 4 working fires a week, and it's never enough. You want to go to 3 or maybe 2 a day,
It's
or
so
something
few
like
and
that.
far between the places that still do that.
You're absolutely right. I was talking to somebody from New York, and they're like, it's not what you think it is. You just see all the videos. We're not running fires like 3 or 4 fires every shift. It's just not the way it is.
No, those days, unfortunately, we were all born a little bit too late for that. We missed.
I was on the very tail end of when stuff was really, kicking off in Montgomery County. I got hired in the mid '80s, and early '80s and '70s, whatever. They were burning the shit out of stuff in the lower 1st Battalion in Montgomery County. But you know what? Like I said, it was a good career, and I wouldn't trade it in for the world. But there's a lot of truth to be said of spending those times in the rank, and spending times in busy stations. Get out of your comfort zone. My getting truly out of my comfort zone would be special ops. I was never a special ops guy. I like extrication work. I like truck work. I think the max special ops I ever did, I was on our dive team in Montgomery County for 12 years, but was never part of USAR or anything like that. So how's that working now? That you got your feet in the special ops. You're a big special ops guy, that I know, and that just the amount of training and that they throw on your back. I mean, it's always another cert. I know the guys that are on Maryland Task Force 1, they're constantly training, with for the FEMA team. And just, it's like our special ops house, they're always at the warehouse doing something, whether they're counting boxes or stacking boxes or whatever. But it's a constant training. It's like almost like being a paramedic, where you're constantly studying for the next protocol or whatever.
It's nothing like being a paramedic. I don't want to be compared to a paramedic. Come on. No, it's a lot, and I don't consider myself a big special ops guy. I think I'm fairly competent at what I do and what we do at work, the way we do things. I think I'm pretty good at that. But then I talk to someone, or I take a class, or I go somewhere, and I'm blown away by the knowledge these guys have. I took a urban rigging class down in Florida, I don't know, about 2, 3 years ago. And within an hour, I'm like, I'm out of my league here. I think I'm pretty good at rope. I know rope my way. These guys, their level of knowledge, I'm like, holy shit. There's so much to learn. The hardest part about the learning curve, though, is we had kind of talked before we even went on, uh, the amount of things. How do you stay proficient or beyond proficient in all the tech rescue disciplines? It's nearly impossible. I know I have strengths and weaknesses. I'm pretty good at rope, but when it comes to trench, it's not something we do very often. It's a few and far between. Even training, we don't do it that much. So I'm not overly comfortable with it. I need someone to kind of hold my hand and tell me, you give me a task, I got no problem with it. But to be the guy standing out front running the show, or being the ops officer, not for trench. Rope, no problem. Trench, not so much. So it's a constant. You can't stop. You can't stop learning. I'll travel around teaching rope classes to various departments, and no matter how much you try and drive it home to these guys, I don't know if it really sinks in, the fact that, yeah, I can teach you this 8-hour class and you'll be fairly proficient at the end of the 8 hours. But if you just go back to your regular life and don't touch this rope again for 2 weeks, a month, 6 months, you're going to forget almost every part of what I taught you. You constantly have to have your hands on this stuff training. That's why at work, we're breaking ropes out usually once every day trick. So it's once every 2 weeks, we're doing something with ropes to have our hands on it.
We do a decent amount of rope work at my volley house, and I'm okay with ropes. I should be better with ropes. We don't pull them out like we should. My whole thing is like, if you're going to ride a truck company or even a rescue squad company, but you're not in special operations, you should have a working knowledge of setting up Z systems and things like that. Being able to just get those minor systems set up so when the special ops guys come, they can build off of that. But just to be able, you may not go over the edge on the rope, but you've got everything built out, got your anchors and all that stuff. So those are the things that, like you said, if you're not touching that, you take that 8-hour rope class and then you go back to the firehouse and talk about what a great class it was, and you don't do anything with it, you've wasted a lot of money and your time. Because, like Tony Tricarico would say, our skills are perishable, and if you don't practice, they go bad. And you'll always be able to pull a line, you'll always be able to throw a ladder, but it's those skills, it's those hard skills that we don't do that often. That when it comes time to do it, if you haven't put a Z system together, a 3-to-1 in 3 years, you're gonna look like a monkey fucking a football, because you're gonna show people how much you don't know. So you really got to touch that stuff. That's why, in the special ops world, when we did dive training, every Wednesday we worked. So every 3 weeks we were touching the dive stuff on our shift. So we were putting the stuff on, going out, whether we're doing ice diving or regular diving. Everything was black water. Everything was dry suits. So we were always touching our equipment, and we were very proficient at that. But yeah, in the special ops world, I mean, like I said, we make fun of those guys because they're always doing something, and we always say, well, we're ordinary ops, we take care of fires and stuff like that. You got special ops, you can't pull a line into a building to put a fire out, but you can tie a rope, type of deal. But it's, if you're going to be part of that higher caliber of being on a task force that's going to travel either throughout the United States or on a team that goes international, you got to be good. You're representing, and you got to be good. You got to be self-sufficient. You can't have somebody looking over your shoulder saying, no, tie it this way, do it that way, type of things. Yeah. Hats off to you guys. We give the special ops guys a hard time, but at the end of the day, when it comes time to put their skills in play, we're out of the way. You guys, it's all you. What do you need from us? I'll hold the other end of the rope for you, but what do you need?
We're pretty lucky, and actually Stanford and New Haven are similar in how the special ops companies are built out. In Stanford, it's a rescue and an engine, 4 people on each, so 8 people in the special operations house. New Haven, it's 5 on the rescue and 4 on the engine, so it's 9 people who, providing vacations, obviously screw things up, who's actually at work, who's coming in on overtime from another firehouse. But when you're staffed with your normal group of people, you have 9 people who are all on the same page. We train the same way. We set things up. We have 2 major target hazards in New Haven that we get probably 90% of our rope rescues out. There's 2 city parks, East Rock and West Rock. One's on the east side of the city, one's on the west. And it's a vertical, essentially 300-foot straight down cliff. And sometimes people decide to, depressed, whatever, they decide to go jump off there. So usually several times a year, we have to go do a full-on rope rescue to deploy people down and package someone and bring them up. So we have the ability to go up there and train. So you're training on the exact site where most of our incidents happen, and you can kind of get it down to a science where we pull up, we know what equipment needs to come off, we know who. We're big on pre-assignments. Like in the rescue, there is a laminated card, and it has each riding position and a whole bunch of different type of incident responses. And it lists for each riding position either what tools you take or what you're responsible for. So if you're going to a residential structure fire and you're riding the hook position, your tool assignment is a hook, a can, and a thermal imager. If you're still riding that position and you're going to a rope rescue, you're in charge of setting up the Arizona vortex, or a high point, artificial high directional. So it takes a lot of that conversation out on scene, trying to figure out who's doing what. You grab this, no, you grab that. It eliminates that for the most part. And it's like being an SOG driven department. It eliminates that gray area of who's going to do what, calling audibles on scene. No, we're just going to go with the game plan unless something out of the ordinary occurs. It's definitely a more efficient way of operating.
It's just the same in Frederick. I was amazed of what Frederick has. I worked in Montgomery County my whole career. I knew Frederick was up there. I knew it was north of us. We got mountains. We've got a couple of rivers that run through Frederick, the Potomac River and the Monocacy River. So there's always water rescue stuff happening in the summertime. The downtown city area, if you get a good rain, it floods. Now you've got urban flooding conditions with high water rescues and things like that. Boats going down through the city. All the mountains that we have, throughout Frederick, there's always somebody's always busting an ankle or probably shouldn't be walking on one of the trails in the mountains anyway because their health sucks and they pass out, and you've got to go, find them and get them and bring them out. But our special ops people are very busy. We got drones now and things like that. But yeah, man, it's a lot. Like I said offline, you guys are truly the jack of all trades, and you got to be the master of all the stuff that you're responsible for. So, not only do you have to keep your fire skills and your rescue skills up, but your special ops skills have to be tip top also, because nobody else is coming.
Yep.
It's going to be you guys. So, well, we're right about just over the 1 hour mark. So, like I said, these kitchen table talks are always pretty good. I think the benefit of just really kind of touching on this volunteer stuff. It's been a growing issue, and I've been a volunteer since I was 12. I'll always be a volunteer. My dad's a volunteer. I think that, just trying to shed a little bit of light of some of the issues that they're having in general public. If you've always wanted to be a volunteer, go volunteer. The career guys, like you said, the career in some jurisdiction, you go volunteer in your hometown if you got the spare time. Nobody's going to take your pension away from you. Go give back to your community. They'd love to have you, especially with the training that you're already coming to. There's nothing better than an already trained volunteer that we can get them spun up on the apparatus and our policy, procedure, stuff like that, and get them on the road. So, Jason, man, I appreciate you coming on the show. Truly some beneficial stuff. And like I said, the volunteer stuff, I don't get to talk about that much, but I think it's truly beneficial for the people that are listening, because they're running into problems too. Hopefully, maybe they pick something up from us, or hopefully they'll leave us a comment of some stuff, how to make things better.
Yeah, man. David, very much appreciate you having me on. So it was an awesome hour. It definitely flew right by.
Yeah. So before you go, plug yourself. Where are you? Where they can find you? Your training group, your Instagram, all that stuff. So people, if they want to get in touch with you or they want to follow you, tell them where you are.
So me personally, I'm on Facebook and Instagram. If you just Jason Rivera on Facebook, or Jason35240 on Instagram. And then my training company is Tactical Resource Fire Training. We are also on Facebook and Instagram. We don't even have a website. Our job is pretty much done through word of mouth and social media. I got about 15 to 20 instructors that teach for me. So if it's something I'm not comfortable teaching, I have a guy that will do it. We travel all over the country. There's nowhere we won't go. So between, my company, Teaching for Capital, and Teaching for Fast, we cover a lot of topics. You name it, we have someone that will come out and, do a class for you.
Awesome. Well, Jason, I appreciate taking the time to be on the Side Alpha Leadership Podcast. It was truly a pleasure having you on there. And I'm sure we're going to hook up again here pretty soon. We're going to be teaching with Capital Fire, doing something somewhere along the line. So
Sounds
with
good.
that, again, be safe, and I'll see you on the training ground.
All right, man. Thank you very much, David.
See ya.
Talk to you.